Welcome back to the Buffalo Reformed Podcast. This week marks the end of the church calendar, and it's fitting that it would end with Thanksgiving. Today, happy Thanksgiving. It's important, I think, in the life of a believer particularly, that we have a time that we set aside to thank the Lord for all the things that He has done for us. And so today's a great day to just stop and think back over the last year, all the ways that God has provided, all the ways that He's led, caused us to grow, all the ways that He has blessed us as His people. There's only one thing that I want to discuss, really, in this brief episode, and that is the Doug Wilson conversation with Sam Harris, the atheist. Sam Harris unlocked that interview because typically it's only for people who subscribe to his channel. And so the full interview is available on YouTube, and I will put the link in the show notes at the bottom. And I would really encourage everybody to just take a minute to listen to it. It's very informative. And if you think about it, I think Sam Harris as an atheist thinker does represent what the average thinking atheistic person who's secular in our society, what he thinks, what his concerns would be with something like Christian nationalism, or what Christians actually think, or what the Bible teaches. And so I'm just going to highlight a couple of items from that show. But I just want to generally point out that Sam Harris was a very good interviewer. He was polite. He seemed to genuinely want to know what Doug Wilson thought, so he wasn't trying to get him. And he says this in a follow-up interview that really, that's because he was banking on Doug Wilson's views being so outrageous that he wouldn't really need to say anything against them. It's just going to be obvious to the average person how outrageous this person's views are, which is funny. But he was polite, and he asked really good questions. And because of how good those questions are, that's why I'm saying that this is a very excellent interview for us to study as Christian people. It just basically for apologetic reasons. So I just want to highlight a couple of things from the interview that I think are worth mentioning and thinking about. The first one is that Doug makes a distinction between a Presbyterian utopia and our today steps that we're going to be taking in order to achieve that goal, right? So it's going to take us a while to get to that point as Christians. And this is a multi-generational vision. And now think about that for a second. That is a very foreign concept to people who are secular and individualistic. They're not thinking about anything beyond their own self, right? And this is why people are not having kids as much these days. And so when you have someone who's saying, yeah, this isn't going to happen in my lifetime, it may not even happen in my kid's lifetime, or even in their kid's lifetime, but it could happen in the lifetime after that, and the steps that I'm taking are going to help those people achieve that goal. That's a very different way of thinking about future generations of people. And it reminds me of C.S. Lewis and his view of birth control. Birth control is a use of biological force against people who have no say. They have no say in this thing, and it's the next generation. It's the next generation of people. So when we're using birth control, and in our case, I mean, we can even just point to abortion without even addressing birth control, we are using force, biological force, and we're exerting that onto other human beings in the womb who have no say in what is done to them. Rather than thinking about it in those terms, we're thinking about, as Christian people, what can we do today that's going to put those people in a better position than we're in? How can we live today so that the future generations of people that are going to be coming into this world are going to be better off than we are? And here's the steps that we're going to be doing in order to accomplish that. These are the practical steps today we're going to be doing in order to accomplish that. That's a really crucial distinction, and I think it does offer something to a secular worldview that is foreign to them, that they don't understand. And I also think they innately know that it's good. It's good to think about other people other than ourselves. The second thing I want to point out is they have this brief discussion, and it happens at about the 1 hour and 30-minute mark, about suffering. Suffering as the unit of measure, because abortion does come up. And Sam Harris makes the argument that it's better for a single-celled fertilized egg to be aborted. It has no nerve endings, is not going to suffer at all, than it is for somebody to be born into, say, slavery, where the days that they are living on Earth are lived in extreme suffering, heat, and the whip, and chains, and labor, forced labor. So he's saying that the unit of measure here is suffering, and that since there's less suffering whenever you abort a child, and that would be better than allowing a child to be born into a situation that would be bad for them, that would lead to more suffering. And Doug answers these questions very, very well. But again, this is an excellent discussion opportunity for you and other believers in your life, and then also for people who are not Christian, because this brings up a couple of key questions for us. The first one is, even if we were going to answer that question, what's wrong with abortion from a Christian perspective? We obviously would say, well, it's murder. You're killing somebody, right? They don't have a say in that. Like, you're just killing them. That's it. You're bringing them into the world through the sexual act, and then you are just snuffing out their life right away. So the suffering is not the important thing. It's the killing. If that was the case, then anybody who is going through any sort of suffering in the world, it would be our right to kill them. And then the question is, well, how much suffering is necessary before you have the right to kill somebody? And those are the questions that they would need to answer. Whereas the Christian person would say, no, it's not. It is not right to kill somebody, even in the setting of suffering. We do not have the authority to take human life. We just don't have that authority. God has that authority, and He has entrusted that authority with the government, with the civil government, the civil authorities, the magistrate, but He does not entrust that to the average person. We don't have that ability, right? And so when we give that authority to an abortionist or to a mother, we are not putting the sword in the hands of the one to whom God has entrusted it. So for the Christian, we can answer that question that way. But secondly, even from a liberal perspective, and when I say liberal, I mean from a liberal social order, we're talking about our nation is founded on the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And so if you're saying that everybody has the right to life, but those people who are born in America, they're conceived in America, they're conceived in our land, in our liberal society, these people who are conceived in our liberal society do not have a right to life. They don't have a say in that. We're allowed to use biological force against them simply because they don't have vocal cords, simply because they don't have a fully developed human body. Because of all those things, then we're allowed to deny them the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So that argument with regard to suffering falls on its face in those two areas. But then it leads to another interesting question. This question about suffering and abortion led Doug Wilson to say, well, suffering is not the unit of measure. He said, if suffering was the unit of measure, then I would agree with you. So then this leads to the next interesting question, which Sam asks, which is, well, if suffering is not the unit of measure, then what's wrong with going to hell? What's wrong with hell apart from the suffering? And that question really made me stop and think for a little bit, because that is a good question. And I'm wondering if we as Christians are prepared to answer that question. And there's a number of philosophical reasons that we could get into why it's such a good question. And I don't want to bog this short episode down with a lot of those musings. But if I were to just flip the question once and say this, what's good about heaven other than the pleasure? Right? What's wrong about hell other than the pain? What's good about heaven other than the pleasure? And I think that that kind of unmasks the question a little bit. We see that the framework from which that question is being asked is an inherently godless framework. And the Westminster Divines answer this question in the very first catechism question and answer. What is the chief end of man? Is the chief end of man the pursuit of happiness? Is the chief end of man the absence of suffering? Is the chief end of man the pursuit of pleasure? And the answer to all those questions is no. The chief end of man is to glorify God, and in so doing, we will also enjoy him forever. We glorify God and we enjoy him forever. So there is pleasure with our pursuit of God. But there's always that implied accusation from the position of somebody who is godless, who's critiquing this and saying, the only reason that you are glorifying God is because it gives you pleasure. And therefore, your pursuit of God is purely for selfish reasons. Or they could say it this way: your pursuit of God, your desire to give him glory, is only because you're trying to avoid the pain of hell. It's coercive. That's the only reason. You are merely a consequentialist. You're just concerned about the consequences of these actions. And I hope you are not distraught by that accusation, because for the Christian person, we are not pursuing an abstract idea of pleasure and the avoidance of pain. We are pursuing a person, and his name is Jesus Christ. This would be similar to if a demon entered the Garden of Eden, okay, and came up to Adam and said, is the only reason that you are tending and keeping the garden because it's pleasurable? Or you can think of Satan coming before the tribunal. He's coming before the court of God, and he's saying, the only reason that Job worships you is because of the absence of suffering. These are the accusations from the evil one. And you can think, if somebody's looking at a relationship that you have with somebody, and they think, I would never want to have a relationship with that person, then their next thought would be, well, the only reason they must have a relationship with that person is because it gives them something. They get something out of it. That's the only reason. That's the only thing that they can fathom. Whereas for us, as Christian people, we do seek the glory of God. That's the unit of measure for us. We're seeking the glory of God. Why? Because we love Jesus. Because we love our God. He's all that we have in heaven and on earth, it says in the Psalms. We don't desire anything else. Our flesh and our heart fail, but God is the strength of our heart and our portion forever. And then you can think of Milton's Paradise Lost, and I believe it's Belial, the demon, who says it's better to rule in hell than to serve in heaven. It's the same idea. We would rather, in our fallen state, we would rather serve ourselves. We'd rather worship ourselves, be seeking our own good and our own pleasure, quote unquote, because we really aren't doing any of those things. Which is why Doug even says in the interview, in answer to the problem of atheism, that it turns in on itself. We are becoming a black hole in and of ourselves. We're just focused here. For the Christian person, we're pursuing God. God is our chief end. We love him, and we know that what comes with this in a truly loving relationship is not the absence of suffering. As a matter of fact, if you truly do love someone self-sacrificially, where you deny yourself, then that can lead to immense suffering. And Lewis points this out in the problem of pain, when he says that mere kindness leads to us desiring the absence of suffering for someone. And that's because we don't have any thoughts to their ultimate betterment, right? But if we were just being kind to our children, we would never spank their bottoms. If we were being kind to our children, we would not be disciplining them to be better people. If we were being kind to ourselves, we wouldn't force ourselves to get up early and go to work, right? But there are things that are good to do out of love that result in suffering but betterment. And this is when the Lord disciplines us, it's not pleasurable in the moment, right? But it leads to something that is better for us. So love allows for suffering. Kindness does not, if it's just kindness. Then there's a distinction there. So all that to say that don't be distraught by the accusation that the only reason you're pursuing God is the absence of pain and the pursuit of pleasure. It's really at its heart a demonic kind of perspective, and because it comes from somebody who can't fathom that we would actually want to have a relationship with Jesus Christ and God and the Spirit, the Trinity, apart from the good things that it provides for us. We wouldn't want to obey the moral law of God apart from the good consequences that it brings. And for a Christian person, that's just simply not true. If you have been regenerated, you've been recreated, you've been turned into someone who has been redeemed. Our affections are now different. We do love God, our Creator. We love the one who has made us and sustains us. We love the one who provides all things for us. We love the one who created this world with all of its beauty. This is the state of being for a Christian person. And yes, there is great pleasure at the right hand of God, pleasures forevermore. But that's not why we're pursuing God. We're not pursuing him merely so that we can have those pleasures forevermore. The promise of pain and suffering for disobedience is a real deterrent, and the promise of crowns and glory and pleasure is a real attraction. But when we have to be careful in our hearts that we are guarding against these idolizations of self, in that our absence of suffering and our obtainment of pleasure is the only thing that's driving us, then that's a demonic and self-centered perspective, and we just have to be on guard against it. So, just to recap, listen to the interview if you can spare the 2 hours. It's really insightful. It's helpful. Listen for the discussion about abortion and how the secular mind thinks about just how they justify that as being less suffering than allowing a child to be born into a situation that would result in greater suffering. And then Doug's answer to that is suffering not being the unit of measure for a Christian person. And then the question, well, if suffering's not the unit of measure, then what's wrong with going to hell? And our response to that, what's wrong with going to hell, is as Doug says, it's the condition that warrants it. That's what's wrong with going to hell. Being in the condition that warrants going to hell is the problem. And there's so much more that could be said about this. And maybe we'll do a few more videos about the philosophical outworkings of these things, and even The Great Divorce by C.S. Lewis, where he is addressing some of these philosophical questions about hell. It's a really good read. But take some time, listen to this. What do we have coming up? Well, today is Thanksgiving, so let's give thanks to God today. Let's spend time with our family. But Advent begins on Sunday. This is the beginning of the next church calendar year. We will be having our next Erie County gathering on this coming Sunday, or the Sunday after this, December 7th. And I'm hoping to do some Christmas-themed poetry. We'll be Christmas caroling as a church in Warsaw, New York on December 12th. And then we'll be walking around to a few houses in that area, and then hopefully be meeting at the church for some cookies and some singing together as a church. We'll have a Christmas Eve service, and the details of that will be sent out separately. And then remember that Christmas lasts for 12 days, and then at the end of that you have the Feast of Epiphany, and we are going to have an Epiphany feast this year. So mark your calendars. Well, keep your eyes peeled for that, because that's not set in stone as to when yet. So these are the things to keep in mind. I hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Buffalo Reformed podcast.